Welcome to this week's episode of Good Grief Believer. I'm really happy today to be talking to Christa McDonald. She is an RN hospice nurse and the author and founder of GLAD, which is Grieving Loss After Death and Dying, GLADD, GLAD. And we're going to talk a little bit about how she came to do this. She has had lots of experience with people at their end of life, and I'm really excited for the things that she's going to teach us. She wrote a book called 8 Lessons the Dying Taught Me, and I'm hoping that we get to tease a little bit of that out of her, because I think this is going to be a really great discussion. And Christa, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Julie. I'm honored. Thank you.
So Christa, would you please start by telling me a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah. So everybody always says, how did you do this work to help people die? And I always told them that it chose me. I did not choose this work from a young age. And my mom's a retired nurse, and she started taking me to the hospitals when I was about 13. I had no choice. I laughed. I said I had no choice. She was strict. So she was like, come on. And I was a candy striper. So I worked every weekend, 7 to 3.
I don't think people know what candy stripers are anymore.
They don't. I know. They're like, they joke. I'm like, no, it's the candy striper. You put the red stripes on. Yeah. And you go and you volunteer around the hospital. And I went all over the hospital with the cart. So that was early on when it started. And, it was funny because there was a woman on the 3rd floor and her room was 306, Lucy, that I always went to. And that's how the whole, the whole loss started. And I would always go to her room for 8 months. And that was back in the day in the hospital. So we're talking about 1993, we're going back to when I was 13. And, people were in the hospital for a long time then. And she had no family. And I would always go to her room and sit there because I had to work and go through the whole hospital. And I'd say, Lucy needs help. And I'd sit with Lucy. So one day Lucy wasn't there. And the nurse said to me, I said, where's Lucy? And she said, Lucy passed away last night. And I'm like, Lucy passed away. And, of course I went to my mother's floor and I'm like, Ma, Lucy passed away. And she was like, okay, just get over it. It's part of life, Christa. My mom at that point.
Wow.
So yeah. She saw a lot of death at that point. And she was like, Christa, it's something you're going to have to get over. You're going to see that if you're going to be a nurse. And I'm like, and in my mind, I'm like, did I choose this? Yeah. So I'm like, did I, So I'm like, all right, just get over it. And what I found was interesting is that at a young age, because I was always a little bit different, I was always that weird kid. And, I kept seeing 306 on the clock. I kept saying 306 and I kept saying to my mother. And I'm like, why am I seeing 306? That was Lucy's room number. I'm thinking about Lucy. And my mom's like, well, it's okay. I'm like, all right. So fast forward to 16, I was in 11th grade to becoming a nursing assistant. And I was in school and I had this patient Mary for 2 days in a row. And she was a bedbound patient. She had white hair. I'll never forget the day. Sometimes I live in it every day. And it was, the sun was shining in. I was in Bellhaven Nursing Home in Bellport, New York on Long Island. And I was washing Mary and she was turned on her side when she was turned on her side. And the teacher walked in and she said, and she was like, Christa. And I'm like, and she's like, Mary's dead. And I was like, Mary's dead? I'm like, Mary's dead, Mary. And I'm 16, So, I kind of was just, I didn't really have much. I was just like, wow. I just remember at that moment before the teacher came in, the light was coming in. I was in this peaceful zone. I had no idea, And so that was my first experience with death, that Mary just whisked away, right? So from 16 to 17, I worked in a nursing home for a whole year before I went into the emergency room. And, there was death every day. Sometimes there was 2-3 deaths a night, and I saw death in different ways. Not everybody died peaceful like Mary. I became an EMT at 18 years old. So I did EMS on Long Island for a couple of years. While I was in nursing school, I worked in the emergency room. I did a lot of jobs at once. So I started to see death all over the place. I saw it in traumatic ways that was like, oh my God. Right. I saw it peaceful at the bedside. So I always tell people by the time I was 23, because that's when I got married and had my first kid, but I had PTSD from just all the death and just all the loss. And I'm like, whoa. So I got married and I had my first son. And as a nurse, like I didn't want to work in the hospitals anymore. So my friend told me about a home care job. And she's like, Christa, you'll see a couple of patients, go house to house, do a wound care, go home. I said, oh, all right, great. So I got hired. I was about 24, 25. And they're like, oh, Christa, you're going to be trained to be the new hospice nurse. The hospice nurse has cancer and she's dying. And I'm like, oh my God. All right. So I was trained in like a crash course in like a week. I'll never forget her name, Gloria. She was an amazing, amazing hospice nurse. And I took on all her patients. At that time, there was not many though, right? Because now we're talking in 2004. We're still going back a long time. I couldn't let anybody know I was a hospice nurse. I couldn't have the company car because it had a logo. So death was like kept, I couldn't wear scrubs. I had to wear, so death was kept at like a whole different level back then. And here I am.
Can I interrupt you for just a second?
Yeah.
Why do you think that was? Why was it such a secret?
Because nobody wants to deal with it. It's hard to say that, oh, that's the end, right? Goodbye. Like loss, and until you experience the loss of a loved one and that grief so bad, it's hard. Nobody wants to talk about death. Like, what do you say?
Like it was something dirty.
Like it's something
shameful.
Dirty. Shameful. And but I look at birth could be dirty too, but death is, and I didn't like OB. They're like, you want OB? I'm like, no, I never, it's funny because I didn't know I was doing this.
You'd rather take them out than bring them in.
Yeah. I'm like, no. So, just like birth, death is this, to me, it's beautiful. It is the same thing because, and like I say to people, especially when you know where you're going, but what I think happens is that grief is so hard for people, like along the way, is because they don't act right in life, right? They don't tell their loved one that we're angry at something. We think that we're something, we're just angry instead of realizing that we came here to really come together as, to come together in love and to help people. So that's what I say. My number one lesson is presence. I could give it to you now because since COVID, it shut the world down and we just disconnected, and I'm even guilty of it, right? We just get into our own space and we're all out here just floating. And I think what's happening now is that we're all realizing that we have to come together and do this, so.
COVID did that in a big way.
We need it in a huge way. So, and a lot of people, what I've seen since COVID, I was in the front lines. I was actually in Annapolis, Maryland, because I was a travel nurse for many years and traveled America. So I seen death in different states. People die differently in different states. They die, so I've seen all of this. But I always say is how you live is how you die. If you're angry and you're mad at life, you're 9 times out of 10, you're going to need more morphine and the morphine won't kill you. So when I say that to people, I know that's
interesting.
We're on a soul level, so when people are like, morphine killed my loved one, no, morphine, your loved one needed morphine because they didn't act right and their soul wasn't right. And that's what I've seen, right? So Mary whipped away, the first person I've seen. And, knowing her history, she was a good person inside and out, And then some people, and then it's just different. But, so going back to, I've seen a lot of death, and then I became the hospice nurse. And that's how my journey, it just started. I did go into different positions in management for a while. And then, I owned a hospice house in Texas for a short time, which was pretty fascinating. I was grateful for that. And then, it led me to here I am now a year ago, when it was a little under a year ago when I had my own personal experience that nobody wants to. So I had, I always tell people I've helped thousands of people die. I had a lot of loss before the age of 19. I helped all my grandparents die on hospice as well, right? So I just feel like everyone's like, how do you do this? I'm like, I don't know. I just think it's who I am, Right. So, up until a year ago, I got a phone call that nobody wants to get from my stepdad. And me and him were very close. And, I just saw him, I just left him a couple of weeks ago, and he called me and he said, Christa, I had a massive stroke. I have left-sided weakness. I'm on the floor. And he's 67. And I always joke he was 67. He had a massive stroke. And I drove there 40 hours straight just crying. And I said, this can't be. I know, so he called me and he said, my heart's good. I said, then you have cancer. And he wound up having cancer in 5 different places. There was no treatment, and he was not happy. So I take his experience, and it wasn't just the loss. From the beginning, at 67, I said to him, my parents got divorced maybe over 20-something years ago. So we kind of lived angry, right? I was like, you're a pimp. I called him a pimp. He had a big belly. He just had girlfriends. He never remarried. He lived alone. So when he got sick, I said, did you ever think you would die? And he goes, no, I never thought about it. And I said, everybody looks for Tony Robbins and all these people. We all want to guarantee. You get guaranteed you're going to die. You want to guarantee you're not going to physically be here. You know what I'm saying?
Nobody gets out of this life alive, right?
No, but I haven't met somebody. So he said, no, I never thought that, and I said to him, I said, well, we're going to live like you're dying, because this is what I do for all my patients. And this is what I felt like this has been my mission my whole life. Like if somebody was dying, I'm like, how do we make you happy? I want to fill your heart and your soul, because wherever you go, it's going to help everybody grieve different. It helps you feel different. And this is what we're supposed to do. So to me, the end of life is fun. And even with my stepdad, as hard as it was, I tell people he passed in his shirt said Big Daddy. We made it fun. I made it fun when you talked about it. Before he passed, though, he said to me, I said to him, how am I going to know it's you too? Because I always try to encourage my families, like, create the bond. There's birds, there's numbers, there's whatever for a reason, right? It all ties whatever you believe. And he said to me, he said, Christa, I'm going to be bird poop. And I'm like, bird poop.
Bird poop. He sounds like a character.
Oh, he was a character. And I mean, I could go into so much more of his journey, but maybe 2 weeks before he died, we were able to take him to St. Augustine, Florida, where he wanted to go. And it was like his final wish. Me and if it wasn't for my boys, like we had oxygen. I mean, we had the whole hospice thing and we were hours away. And I told him, I said, if you die, because he was I said, we have to drive you back a couple of hours. And I can't tell, I was doing illegal stuff. I didn't care. He's like, all right, Christa. He's like, you're crazy. But he's like, if I'm dead, I'm like, so we made this trip. It was the most amazing trip. And then, we brought him home, and it was like I remember 2 days before he passed, I was helping him shower, and he just looked at me and he just started crying. Oh. And I looked at him and I'm like, this is, both of my parents sometimes really don't know 100% what I do. And he looked at me and he's like, this is what you do? Because he never knew. He was like, you just help people die. And he's like, this is what you do? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, this is not easy. And I'm like, no. I said, that's why I tell people to live like they're dying, because you do not know that 1 minute, right, that you're going to have a stroke. Right. You don't know that 1 minute. So who are you being? And I tell people, live like you're writing your eulogy and your legacy every day, right? Yes. You don't have to be angry. If you're angry, let's talk about it. And a lot of people hold, anger from their childhood, their mother, their father. They blame their mother and their father. If you're a parent out there, we do the best we can with what we know how as parents. We learn from each other. Our parents, you have to love them and honor them. Right. We got to get back to that, because they did have us. No parent is perfect, but they're lessons. Everything in this life is a lesson that, that people don't realize. So I became, just my whole life, I was just fascinated with why Mary just whisked away, why some people just, they don't get to say goodbye. They don't grieve. They don't do all of this stuff, so it was pretty interesting. But when he passed, I had this vision of GLAD, which is the nonprofit for probably over 10 years. When, I have this video, and it was this guy that I had to deliver a letter to. I didn't know him, and he lost his wife. He was in his 50s. And when I opened the door, he was shaking. And I said, and he's like, I don't know what to do. It was 6 months since his wife passed. And he said, I don't know where to go. He's like, I can't leave the house. We got him the right support, and he was able to move on, right? So people don't realize that grief, we're in a grief avoidant society. Nobody wants to talk about grief. And it's not 3 to 5 days through businesses to help you grieve. I tell people it takes a year. And if you don't have support, you're not going to know what to do. And that's when GLAD started. So I had the acronym GLAD because in New York, MAD and SAD was a big deal. Mothers Against Drunk Driving, Students Against Drunk Driving. And I said, the world they don't need MAD or SAD, they need GLAD. So once he passed, I was holding his hand. It was just me and him. And I didn't realize how much that ending is so traumatic to people. So it was me and him. And for about the first 20 minutes, I felt like I was dying. I couldn't even get out of that situation, Wow. So after I got out of it, I was able to breathe. And then, the next 2 weeks, it was just like staring at a wall. That's what it felt like. Like I couldn't move. I was paralyzed. Like, what just happened to me? Like, what, Right. And I had to be the hospice nurse, and the daughter. So it was conflicting too. And, all of a sudden, that's when the acronym of GLAD came out. So GLAD is Grieving Loss After Death and Dying. And it's the first national online 24/7 bereavement hotline. So just like you have the 988 number for suicide, this is the bereavement hotline. This is one area. Of it. The second one is we have live online classes with like, to me, I say they're world-renowned grief coaches. Because me and Ahira have been through interviewing these grief coaches that are, that have experience in it and here to hold space and really help you move through that.
Oh, so that's right wonderful.
Now we have about we're going to have up to 55 classes. So it's not if you lost a parent, if you lost a spouse. And I keep this just universal to help people with grief, because in my career as a nurse, I tell people there's 10,000 religions, and there truly is. My experience, I've seen thousands write to God, right to God, Jesus, God, Jesus. God, Jesus are the only words that I've ever heard. And, you know, the big words, right? And that's what, you know, that's what I hear. So I tell people, call it, you know, whatever you believe in. If you don't believe in anything, it doesn't matter. We're here to just help people. And, you know, and I always tell people, even when I go to people when they don't believe in anything at the end of life, I'm like, let's believe in something, you know, because if you think that you're doing this life yourself, you're out of your mind, because we're not doing it alone. So what you know, yeah. And that's, you know, that's the truth. So the third part to GLAD too is we're going to help 50 families every year with $8,000 to help their dreams come true. Yeah. At the end of life, because I feel like when people, they have to be imminent on hospice. And I think that at that moment, we could create at least 50 miracles for right now. Of course, we're going to expand. This is how we start. But I think that if we help people when they are dying, to help the family through grief, through life, through this journey that is inevitable for all of us, and we make this a beautiful experience, we're going to look at this different. I do believe, you know, I know. I tell people too, I'm like, I don't, you know, it's hard for me to really believe that we die. I don't believe that we die. And, you know, I respect people's wishes, but like I said with Lucy, right? I saw 306. And now throughout my whole career, from thousands of people believing in thousands of different religions will tell me, oh, my doorbell rings at 9 p.m. every night. I mean, I've heard thousands of stories, and I'm like, oh, I thought they were dead. So just like we pray to a God and Jesus that we can't see, you have to believe that your loved one is still here.
Right.
So when I tell people, show up and be present for that dying person, I know it's an uncomfortable space, and people are like, oh, I can't deal. But do you want somebody to say that to you when you're dying? Oh, I can't deal, so I'm going to leave them alone. No.
Right.
We want to show up and be present and bring that awareness. And I tell people, when you're in that sacred space at the end of your life, and people that have been there and know what I'm talking about, you're blessed. You get this invincible blessing out of nowhere, because it isn't easy to lose somebody. The physical aspect is so hard. And, you know, somebody said with the hotline, and I'm going to give you a big example that it maybe happened to say on your, you know, for your podcast today. I was in Costco yesterday, and because grief can hit you out of nowhere. Like, it'll come down and slam you, and you're like, oh my God. And me and my stepdad, he was a character. We love Costco. I don't know why, even before he got sick. But when he got sick,
who doesn't love Costco?
I know, yeah, and everything. We just love Costco. And even if you get a credit card. I got like $1,000 back this year, you know. But so we love Costco. And when he got sick, we went there a lot because he was able to use the automated cart. And he would hit people. I'm like, oh my, he had the stroke. So sometimes he got funnier after the stroke, you know? But so I was just in Costco yesterday, and I'm shopping, and it just hit like every emotion, every laughter. And I'm like, and I couldn't, like, I'm telling you, Julie, I sat down on the water, and I'm like, like, I was like, Christa, you got this. And like, it felt like I was shaking, you know? And I mean, it brings it up even now, because I'm like, it just brought me back to his ending, his death. And I'm like, oh my God. And I'm like, Christa, you're okay. And I felt like I was there for a second. And I was like, why is this hotline, you know? And this man came over and he said, you're all right. I said, I'm all right. I said, I had a loss. It's almost a year. I'm all right. But I appreciate you, you know, because I couldn't even stop it. And I felt like stupid.
How lovely of him, though, to even see that you were in distress and care.
I was just a mess, Julie. I was on the water, and I'm like, oh my God. And I'm like, why aren't, you know, and I kind of got mad, and I was like, why aren't you in this store in the cart, you know?
Yes.
And it hit you. And then it was like, and this is what happened. I'm going to tell you what happened. I'm sitting on the water, and all of a sudden I look over to the side, and a McDonald's coffee box is there out of nowhere. That was the coffee he always drank. And I always told him, you have to stop drinking the McDonald's coffee. Out of nowhere, Julie, there's the coffee. And I heard him say, just get up. You know, I'm not dead. And I'm like, all right. The coffee was there. And if we take this moment, and that's what got me up, right? Because I would have called the hotline, because I was like, somebody needs to come to Costco. You know?
Yes.
Coach, I didn't know what to do, because, you know, when you love somebody, like I loved him, it's hard. You know, sometimes it's easier if you didn't love the person, but when you love somebody, it could just pop out of nowhere. And that's why I created this, because there is nothing to go to. There is no support. There's nothing. So I want to be able to help people in grief, make it not a grief avoidance society. Just come to GLAD and I want to get the program into Medicare. That's truly, you know,
that's a wonderful goal.
And, you know, my end goal. So that Medicare, because bereavement, There's shortages everywhere in hospice with the nursing, with the bereavement, and in smaller companies, bereavement is done by a social worker. It's not even really done. They send you letters and then they call it for 13 months. But there's nobody to talk to. Like if you did just have a breakdown, because if I didn't have my tips and tools, I could have just, I could have hurt myself in Costco.
Yeah.
Who knows?
You just suffer more. You suffer more.
Exactly. So I think it's a combination. When people have that year, they know if you lose somebody, you give yourself a year to go through the birthdays, to go through the holidays, to go through the day-to-day. Forget those big things, but the day-to-day, like, oh, I would call them now or something like that,
Yeah.
So give yourself that time, but know that you can rebuild your life, find the peace. And, I always tell people, like, take your pain. And that's what all these amazing grief coaches, I think there's about 10, and there's healing arts, because we're also going to have like yoga. There's this guy that does the sound bath meditation so that we can reset our nervous system. So
I've done that. Yeah. I did a sound bath after my husband passed away. I have a friend who has a yoga studio. If anybody doesn't know what that is, you lay in the dark, and they put a kind of like a mallet, like a fabric colored mallet, over these bowls, I think. Yeah. And it makes a frequency, a hum, that somehow it calms your nervous system. I was laying there doing this, and all of a sudden something opened up inside of me, and all the grief poured out.
All of it.
And it was such a cathartic experience. It was like getting all the bad out, and it came out in the form of tears. Yeah. It was a really powerful thing. That's interesting.
Yeah, it is. And, it's not always necessarily bad. It's getting all the emotions that aren't serving you to continue on living your life.
Yes.
Right? Because grief can feel heavy. And then, but, the biggest part about it too is the grief at the end, because we aren't. And that's why I tell people, my whole life, I've just, I love people. I felt like it was like kind of my job in life to make sure that people were dying, to make sure that they were happy, like, and just make sure that you live a good life. And because you always saw these ghost hunting shows and whisper, and you hear all this stuff in that, those worlds. And sometimes I'm like, maybe those, I've helped people that were handcuffed to the bed, that I'm like, God loves you, you're a good man, whatever you have to say. And it's like, that they go there. Their soul goes different when people, I've written poems. I've done a lot of things right before people pass, because I want them to know that they're loved. This world is rough. This world could be really rough for all of us.
Yes.
And, I always said, my mom always said, it's kind of funny. She's like, don't be scared to die. She's like, don't be scared to die of the dying. You should be scared of the living.
But have you worked with people who have been afraid to die because they were afraid to be reunited with family members that they had bad relationships with?
No, that's not one of them. No, the ones they're actually, now I think a lot of people that are scared to die, it's because they've just depended on themselves, and they thought that they were in control of their lives. And a lot of times those people, I believe, they kind of live below the line. I always told my kids, right? The ways of being that are below the line. If you're angry, you're not loving, you're judgmental. We're so judgmental. We're always ready to, us women too, we're ready to hurt a man nowadays. Like, why don't we bring our feminine energy up? Let's love the man. Maybe I'm a little old school, but those values,
right.
We lost a little bit of that. We've gone mad. And you gotta sizzle down and get back to the family or the connection, right? Your soul family, whatever. Yeah. And
try to have peace. And that's true. We live in a state of anger and agitation a lot.
We do.
Yeah. And I do believe, I absolutely believe that people's personalities do not change after they cross over to the other side. And when you start to recognize how they show up, it's so obvious. You can't unsee it after that.
No, you can't. You can't. And my stepdad was a UPS driver. So every day I see 1,000 UPS because, driving trucks. All of a sudden I'll be like, oh my God, and I'll think of something. And if you learn to like flow your life with them, because, whatever they say, we're souls having a human experience. And that's what I believe God is. But I believe God, and whatever God, spirit, whatever you call him, I believe that's all of us. Like, I feel like we're all one, and we're all just hurting each other right now.
Yeah.
And people they're scared to die because they're living so mean, and they don't, and
so disconnected from other people, right?
Very. disconnected from
and
themselves.
even from their own divine nature and origin.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. And I tell people sometimes you got to, read a book, peel the layers to become, to see, and just stop blaming your parents. You take responsibility for yourself. Because I've seen, grown men at like 70 that are like, my mother and father. And I'm like, you just ruined your whole life because your mother and father are dead now. And you just, so,
and they carry, you can continue to carry those rocks in your backpack, right? It just makes your journey so much harder.
It does. But, another thing I tell people too is, kind of just reach out to your neighbor too. If you do know somebody's dying, that it always comes out. What do you say? And when I've had deaths, I walked in and I'm always like, I have no words. Like, I'm here. Whatever.
And that's good enough. Right.
That's good enough. Yeah. Because I'm sad too. And when people would say, oh, they're in a better place, I'm like, they really kind of are. We're in this crazy world, but I don't like that. There's nothing to say. And that's why I say to people, can I give you a hug? I have no words, I'm here. I'm going to stay in touch with you, and that's where I write. I say a lot too, like after the casseroles come and everything, then everything stops and people are grieving in silence and they don't know where to go. And then they're like, oh my God, how do I get through this? So we offer the 7 days a week classes. This program, is going to launch April 1st. Our live event is April 14th in Sarasota, Florida. We're doing
so tell me, give us all the information. How do we get a hold of you? What's the hotline? Do that.
So April 1st is when this all launches. So don't call the hotline today. It's 844-42.
April 1st, 2026.
Yes. So that's when the classes will launch. It's on a Wednesday. The classes will launch, and then April 14th, like I said, is the live event.
Okay.
That is going to be in Sarasota, Florida. And, I want to really do it 4 times a year. That's my goal, so that people could come together and just grieve and differently. And, the GLAD community will expand too. We're going to have like singles groups for widows on it. I see it in a big way. I always wanted to have like a singles group for people that are sick and have different illnesses, because a lot of people feel we all have illnesses. We're all sick somewhere. People are always like, oh, I'm sick. I don't have an illness. I don't think that it's a reason to be alone. So I've been in thousands of people's homes, and I don't like when people are alone.
Yes.
And, I want them to have support or, something like that. So, so that will launch. And, we're hoping to give April 1st, not hoping, we're going to give the first $8,000.
Wow.
I think it might be Arizona. I said Texas first, but I think I'm going to Arizona first.
Okay.
To somebody there. So, so we're just excited. Of course, we're looking for founder circles. This goes by donations, till we get plugged in with Medicare. So any donations, anything anybody
do you
wants.
Do you have a 501c3 already set up?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So how do we contact you? Is there a website?
Yeah, gladcommunity.com. So www.gladcommunity.com is what you could go on.
Okay. And it's a GLADD community.
Yeah, GLADD. Yeah, I didn't know this before I started GLAD. There is another GLAD, I think, in California, but we're not related. So this is a GLADD.
Okay.
Yeah. And so they could go on the website, check it out. And just, we have a Facebook group too, gladcommunity.com, that they could join as well. On my Instagram, I'm Grieve with Christa, so they could go on Instagram and it's Grieve with Christa. Also, my book will be coming out in by the end of March. My goal is March 18th. That's the
wow. You have been so busy.
Yeah. And I'm working on my second book, and my second book is going to be pretty. It's going to be pretty fascinating for the world to see. Yeah. Yeah, they always say your first book comes out, because I wanted to write this first book forever, right? And then the second book will probably really show more of a connection on how we create that connection to the other, with the other side once they pass. And it's nothing demonic. It's who we all are, like people mistake, and I don't like the titles I really don't. When people are like, oh, the medium, and I get it that those titles out there, but I think we all have that ability. If we just pay attention and we get into neutral, right? If we're in our emotions and we're crying all the time, sometimes, and that's why GLAD is going to help you come down to here, so that you can see the McDonald's coffee box when you like, oh, all right, okay, you're there. That's weird.
Right.
I didn't see that.
Right. Which then makes you smile or giggle as you think about them.
Because I was like, who do I call? I was going to call. I'm not kidding. I was going to call one of the grief coaches. I said, who do I call?
Why not?
I know,
Right?
but then the box got me out, right? Because this is what I teach people, and I say that because it was probably the day right after he died, I get in the car, Julie, what's on my windshield? Poop. I wasn't ready to handle it. That was the other part. Yeah. I was not ready to handle it at all. Like I was like, get off my, I'm like cleaning.
Yeah. It was a painful reminder.
Now I see it. I'm like, oh, okay. I got you, cause he's helping me wherever I am in that moment in life when he comes up or something like that happens. I'm like, it's not a good idea. Maybe they're trying to help you do this life.
That's right. That's right.
That's when you really let it. Yeah.
That's another lesson that's so important to embrace, that they truly care. They're involved. People who have near-death experiences will often be able to recount seeing their loved ones in different states of grief, distress over their situation, and they have memories of sitting in the car, right, saying, "I'm okay. It's okay. It's going to be okay," And those are just the ones that are able to return to their body and tell us about their experience.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And
wow.
It's magical, this whole thing. But I think that the grief journey, if you have the opportunity to take care of somebody that's dying, it starts there. And, I've been in so many houses, and that's why I think families were always like, Christa, because I went in there and I made death that they were laughing. And I would say to people, he's dying. What are you going to do when he's dead? You're going to get a boyfriend? Right. I mean, God gave me that personality, but we laugh, but it is like, life is going to go on. Talk about it now. Maybe he wants you to do this or do that. And nobody even prepares for their death. Right. Like if prepare for it now, you just don't know, because that's another thing why families are just torn apart, because people think that we're going to live forever. Right. So they're like, I'm not going to put a beneficiary. I'm not going to do this. You're not going to take my stuff.
Right.
You don't die. I never seen anybody bring their things and money, as we know. And people are so tied to that worldly money and things. And that's not what it's not what about death and dying. And you could be eliminated. Right. Everybody's like, I have to do this. I have to do that. Sometimes you just got to be still. Right. And just in that, so it causes so many problems at the ends of families when they don't really talk about death. Do you want to be cremated? Do you want to be buried? I want to become a diamond. I've been a death doula for many years. I have so many titles, but you could become a tree. You could become a rock. You could make your death beautiful.
Yes.
Go become a plant. You could become a tree. I mean, let's do something with, and look at, and just get just a collective here to look at death in a different way. It's not bad. Right. It's not ugly, but live like you're dying, because you really are. And I've known, I lost my stepson like 12 years ago too. He was 22, which wasn't easy, but I wasn't there for that. It was just, we were in two different states. It just happens like that. But right after he passed too, like a black lab, when I met him at 9, I raised him for a while, and we had a black lab that died. And, like 3 days after he died, a black lab, a little puppy, came into my life after he passed. And I was like, the lab died now. The lab died at like 9 years old, but it was like, it was almost to his 10th year that the lab died. But I was like, thank you for giving me this dog, because I wasn't there with his death. It was a hard death because of just how it was. And,
Yes.
But that's how it works. And then that dog just comforted me. I'm like, all right, Billy, it just, those are the things that happen, but you have to embrace it. And if nobody tells you that, if you kind of listen to what the world tells you, like, oh, you just die and that's it, there's no connection, it's over. That's not the truth.
Or all these things are just a coincidence. It's your mind trying to comfort you.
Yes. Yeah. And this is not Christa being a crazy person. This is Christa having thousands of deaths and families telling me. Oh, right. My grandmother used to say this too. And my grandmother was a Roman Catholic hardcore. The pillow would fall every night at 8:00 on her head. And she's like, oh, it's my Salvatore. Sam Salvatore, it was my grandfather. I'm like, he drops the pillow on your head? She's like, yeah, because we'd always go to bed at that time. We'd take the pillows down and the pillow would always fall. And to her, that was comforting.
Oh.
So, I mean, that's
It was a connection. It was a connection for her on one side of the veil of death with someone on the other side of the veil of death.
Exactly. It's a connection, because it's don't
beautiful.
Die. Our body does, but we don't die, right? So if you're praying to a God and Jesus, you don't see. It's the same thing with your loved one. It's all, we're all here.
Well, and for a Christian, isn't it the whole point of Christianity, our belief that Christ lived again, that he was resurrected, you know, that
Yep.
Where did his spirit go during those 3 days in the tomb?
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. And that's why when people say,
that's the hope that we have.
It is. And it's my whole career. People are like, are you a psychic medium? How do you know that? Because I have a gift. And I always tell them, I said, I'm Christ with an egg. I said, I work for God. That's what I've said my whole life. He tells me things because he gave me this job to help you get out of this world with a good heart and soul. I can't explain it. There's no explanation to it. I don't, I'm just doing his work.
What more beautiful commission could a person have?
For sure.
Now,
when I was 18, I wanted to go into the army.
Way.
I wanted to be a hairdresser. I did this. I mean, seeing death at 16 like this, if it wasn't for my mother, she was strict. My mother was a strict New Yorker, and she's like, you're going to be a nurse. And I'm like, I'm going in the army. I had it all filled out. I got my RN at 22. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You've had an amazing life. Some really, really amazing experiences.
I have. I always say I did it as a single mother. I was a single mother my whole life. So my boys in school, it's funny because I saved their letters and they would say, we had to give so-and-so a pie. Then we had to go give so-and-so. I ripped them all around America with me. People thought like, oh, Christa party. No, what I did, if I knew somebody, I'd Amazon this, do that, make sure this person, if God brought me this patient, I'm supposed to do whatever I have to do. If I had to drain my bank account, I did so, I'm here to help people because it always comes back. And that's how I just looked at it. But yeah, I'm grateful for them because they knew what I do. And one of them was there when somebody passed. I felt bad, but my kids were always part of this too, because I'm like, we got to help these people.
I love that. I mean, seriously, you think about the different skills that you instill in children as they're growing up. Yeah. Because you are preparing them for life and adulthood, right? Yeah. I hadn't thought about until you were saying this just now, what an important skill it is to help our children acknowledge death and learn how to show up for people who are dying or who have lost someone. This is a vital, vital life skill.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like kids do a better job than we do as adults. That's the interesting part. Because a lot of people
don't always give them enough credit, do we?
We don't. Because it's almost like they're all right. You're crazy. Like kids I've always seen, teenagers, obviously they're a little bit, it could become, but just kids, it's different. Yeah.
It can be very straightforward. Wow.
Yeah. I know. So I joke because I don't have any diagnoses, but in my lifetime, I had like 13 in my body, things removed, like 14 actually, things removed. So my friends and family are like, you're a mummy.
Yeah.
Because nothing's wrong with me. So I'm like, all right, maybe I'm a mummy. Who knows? It's not easy to do, but I'm grateful because I've met amazing people. Like I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't be who I am without those people. Just along my journey from Lucy at the age of 13 that I think about to this day. Too. And she still comes in. I'll still see 306.
Oh, I love that.
At times. And I'm like, oh my God, Lucy, there you are, and that was how long ago? That's how it works though. I got a lot of Lucys though. Sometimes I live in that world too much, but it's a nice world. That's what I'm saying. Everybody's scared to die. But if it is, I can't go into all near-death experiences, right? I feel everybody asks me at 16, was that one? I'm going to say that it was. Absolutely. When you look back on it now, I was just in that place. And when the teacher came in, I'm like, what? I mean, I couldn't make something like that up. But if that's what it is, I'm ready. Sign me up there. It's peaceful, right? And that's why I want to bring heaven to earth and let's everybody regulate your nervous system.
Yes.
Your body, your mind and soul, self-care.
Yes.
Get back to loving yourself so that you could love others, and just be the example for your children too. Because a lot of times too, we all feel like we got to beat our kids and beat them to something that they're not. And they're people too. People don't understand that too. Because there's a lot of parental stuff. And with my boys, I just was like, they would ask me things and I'm like, what does your heart tell you? And the truth is that we don't get back to our own hearts. We listen to this one, to that one, and then we're mad why we're not happy. Listen to your own heart and soul. And then you can live the life that you want. And that's why when people like my boys are happy right now. They're living. That's why I'm like, it's weird. They're like, they're in Peru. And I'm like, I'm happy. I'm happy they're not in America. I worry about them in America versus Peru. But But that's what it looks like when you follow your own heart. You peel the layers and live the best life that you can. Because when you get out of this world, because you're guaranteed, what do you want people to say about you?
Right, right. Well, and anytime anytime your heart tells you something that's going to connect you with other people or connect you with God, as opposed to disconnecting you, you can be pretty sure this is the right path, right?
Exactly. And, somebody special in my life, she always told me, God guides and Satan drives.
Yes.
Right? So if we're guided, that's our soul's path, right? Because it flows. That's right. It's easy. What I'm doing now, I've wanted to do this for over a decade, 15 years, right? It doesn't feel like work. Am I putting in massive? Yes, I'm putting, but this is my soul's work. It's a passion. Right. It's a purpose, and I'm excited to give the 8,000 to the first patient because I miss in that space, when they're dying.
Yes. I love it. I love that. I want to tell you about, something that happened in my life. I have a good friend who was diagnosed with ALS.
Okay.
And she had just seriously recently gone through a divorce. And so she was a single mother. She and her husband lived close by. They shared custody of their 3 kids, but still she's essentially, alone with this diagnosis. And ALS is devastating. It just slowly takes all of your bodily freedom away. Yeah. And she has a vast network of friends, big group of friends, and we all pitched in, and we were able to send her and her kids to Amsterdam to visit her brother who lives in Amsterdam. She was a ballerina. She and her brother did ballet together. As a matter of fact, Dancing with ALS, if you looked at it on YouTube, Brianna Olsen's story.
I'm going to write it.
It's beautiful. Yeah. She is just the most lovely, gracious, incredible woman. So her brother that she would dance with is a director at the ballet in Amsterdam. So she and her kids were able to go over there while she could still function, while she could still get on a plane. And I mean, she was in a wheelchair, but still, those kids will lose their mother almost certainly within the next, few years. Yeah. But they will have that memory forever of that time that they spent together. And I will never regret the money that we pooled to send them so they could go and have that trip together. It is a beautiful thing that you're talking about, giving people a chance to do something very meaningful.
People and family, that's beautiful. I'm telling you, I got tears. Because that's what it's, I don't know, that's just who I tell my mother it's her fault, It took me helping people from a young age. I'm programmed. I can't help it, but I love it.
I love that you're doing that. What about the people who have death come on them, like a thief in the night, What's your counsel for them?
This is the hard one, right? Because it always goes back to how you're living daily, even if you're not the one that died, right? Because the biggest part is that, and I just had somebody I talked to a couple of weeks ago that she lost her brother who was 27 and they weren't talking for 2 months. And, the part is on that, right? Because I do get that. Oh, we weren't talking. And the truth is sometimes is we got to trust, right? God, big bird in my book, call him whatever you want. I don't care. We got to trust that his plan is the plan. Yeah. Just like with my stepson, I wasn't there. I didn't there was something, I was too far away. There was a reason, right? I'm not mad. I'm actually grateful because I don't know if I could have handled it, right? So if you weren't there, you weren't talking to him, maybe they loved each other. It wasn't anything bad. It was something stupid. And then we talked through it and and I'm like, you have to trust that this is the plan and you just go through it from there. But that's why I tell people, if you're mad, you're usually mad at yourself. That's the truth, right? You're mad because you're living what somebody else told you to live, not what you want to live. So if you get to a point where you can live every day in that, in that place, right? What do they say? somebody says, the vortex, or in just in that place of love, maybe in your heart space, just, we don't have to talk about anybody. If you're angry, just, it's like leave people better than you found them. And that's what I always told my kids too. So if we're in the fight or flight, which I lived my whole life I have, I can't lie. I've come a long way. I've done 8,000 modalities and things. If you would have known me in my 20s, I couldn't even pay attention. But this is where you have to, take a deep breath and realize that this life is not that serious. Because if your game, it's almost like Pac-Man, I tell people, right? If you're eaten by Pac-Man tomorrow, you just sit here and you were mad, you were stressed about everything. For what? Now you left this person. And the truth is that people celebrate death too, right? Because I've met very mean people and they're like, wives are like, oh no, it's good, he's gone. You don't want that either. You want somebody to just be happy that you died because you're mean? No.
Right.
But that happens way too often. Like, oh, thank God they're dead. Like, something's wrong there, We're not living right if somebody's happy that you're dead. So, yeah, there's, it's just to be mindful of every day how you live. If it happens unexpectedly, there's no words. This is where you have to trust that the plan is the plan. And this is why they say that live like you're dying because you don't know the plan. Right. So this is the whole, like, it just comes back down to that. But you have to, I always get another thing too about the kids, right? Kids are hard. The kids are hard, but sometimes I truly believe that sometimes I look at the babies that come in and just go, forget under the age of 12, but truly under the age of 12 that I've taken care of. Sometimes I tell people, I think they're little earth angels that come in to wake us old ones up that aren't doing it right? Because we see this baby and then bam, your whole life is shattered because you weren't acting right. And that's hard to tell people. But I've seen people. I'm like, well, why are you acting like that? Why'd you do this? You can see people, So that's why sometimes people are scared because, my book on it is The Soul Worker. And I'm like, because I just see the truth. You want a good heart and soul, right? I did the work. We want to be the best version of ourselves, that we can.
Yeah.
And, there's so many layers to it, but live like you're dying. And the children that come in, like I said, I think that they're a gift to us. Sometimes nobody ever wants to see a baby die.
It changes people forever, right? When they lose someone very, very tiny and young. And it can be a catalyst to a lifetime of more service, more compassion, more empathy. I've heard that time and time again from people who've lost little ones.
Yeah. And when I worked in the ER, it happened 3 times and they were 2 weeks or less. They came in with the baby, right? What'd you do? I rolled on the baby. Don't sleep with your baby in the bed. And I know that sounds crazy, but on the ambulance too, how many I had that they rolled on their baby and they're dead and then they're mad. And it's like, you don't sleep. I know that we get tired, but I was always mindful of never to sleep, never to do that. I probably had, but people don't know how common it is, right? So I'm telling you, don't sleep. There's some things that can be prevented too.
Right.
That we do as well, right? That shouldn't be. But that was a big one that I saw. And people, that one's a hard one for people, but they want to be close to their baby and that's why they have the bassinets, So there's certain things too. I don't know what made me think about that, but it's
all your years of experience. Obviously, you're coming from the ER where you see these preventable deaths, which that can be quite a burden on somebody's heart. But then again, I think for me, everything always comes back to, okay, what did Jesus teach? Because I believe that those teachings are are truly the answer to all of the. So he taught very simple things: love one another, love others, forgive others, forgive yourself for that mistake, right? Believe that there's peace.
There's peace.
That it's possible.
Yeah. And I think he says there's an afterlife, right? Believe there's an afterlife.
Yes.
Like that's the afterlife. Your families are having a party. They're waiting for us to get there. So if we live here, we're not having fun in our party here. They're having fun. Have fun in your party.
Right.
Like we have to be here. Make it the best. Why are you going to be mad?
That's right.
There's so many things in this world that you can do, right? Go look at trees, mountains.
This has been such a fun conversation, Christa. I hope that I get to Sarasota sometime. I would love to see what you guys are doing right in person. That would be amazing.
Yeah, no, that would be great. No, it would be so great. No, I appreciate you having me. I know we just have to create awareness and It's a big
Yes.
community out there that the hearts are breaking. And I tell 8,500 people die a day in the United States. And,
Wow.
one death is attached to 13 people, they say. So there's probably 35, 40 million people grieving out there right now.
Yes. Yes. It is. It is the universal experience.
Yep. And it's an ICD-9 code now.
Wow.
Because Medicare, it's mental health. Yep.
I love that. That acknowledgement is really big. That's huge.
It is.
Yeah. Wow.
People are going to get the help, and no one's going to grieve alone. And that's the point of GLAD.
I appreciate so much that this is what you are dedicating your life's work to. This is wonderful. And I hope that people get in touch with you through gladcommunity.com, right?
Yes.
GLADD community.com. And then your book.
My book. 8 lessons. Yeah. 8 lessons dying has taught me.
Yes. 8 lessons dying has taught me by Christa McDonald. Look for that. I'm going to look for it. I think it's going to be really a fascinating read, and you're just a fun person to talk to. It's been really a neat conversation.
I know. Yeah. I appreciate you, Julie. Yeah. We're just talking. Thank you so much for having me.
So the last question I always ask everybody is, what do you think it means to grieve well?
That's a good question. To grieve well, I think, is to be connected to your inner, right? So if you, like me yesterday in Costco, to know that you're going to have those times, right? That it's not going to be easy, to just know that it's not going to be easy. But when you have those times, what are you doing to get yourself out of them, right? Mm-hmm. To grieve well, and to acknowledge your feelings and your emotions. Don't push them away, and let them guide you, but guide your pain into your purpose, right? Mm-hmm. And create a balance in your body, mind, and soul every day. Do something for your mind, do something for your body and your soul, whatever that looks like. And I think that's what it's every day. It's a choice. I believe that grieving well is a choice, without a doubt.
I absolutely agree. I love that. Thank you so much, Christa.
Thank you, Julie.